It's all over to you.
Perfect. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the parents and the class of 2021. Today, we are partnering with DSOBS, a series of talks called The Road Ahead. I'm Arjun Bartwal, ARB, your moderator for the evening. We have three very exciting speakers today who are at very different points in their careers and have been to few of the most coveted institutes in India, US, and the United Kingdom. How we've structured this talk today is we would be asking them a set of questions which border around a few broad themes, like admissions, what to do once you get there in college, and the road ahead from there. So we would have the speakers who would be answering in the following order. We would have Vihan, who would be taking care of talking about the US point of view. Mr. Tarun Sawhney, who would be talking about the UK point of view. And Yash, who had studied at St. Stephen's and then Oxford later, would be talking about the Indian point of view. I would just give you a brief bio about the speakers. Vihan was our school captain in 2012. He was accepted to numerous colleges in US like Harvard, Princeton, Penn, Dartmouth, Georgetown, and he chose to study at Stanford University and graduated in 2016. After 3 years of work in Delhi, he's again got back to college and studying in the second year at the law school in University of Virginia. So that's Vihan, who will be talking about the American point of view today evening. Mr. Tarun Sawhney, a graduate from the class of 1991. He graduated with a bachelor's and a master's degree from Emmanuel College at the University of Cambridge in UK, and then went on to do his MBA from the Wharton School of Business at University of Pennsylvania. Tarun is the Vice President of the Doon School Old Boys Society, the Vice Chairman and MD of the Triveni Engineering and Industries Limited. Many of you have actually interned with him, and those of you who may not have interned physically at his organization, a little known fact is he's probably made a lot of personal calls to open a lot of doors for you people to go out and intern. Tarun would be speaking today evening with the UK point of view. Yash is from the class of 2007. He's currently working with the government of India. And after Doon School, he went on to read history at St. Stephen's College, followed by a master's degree in South Asian Studies from the University of Oxford. So with that introduction, I would like to leave the mic open to Mr. Kamal Ahuja, our Deputy Headmaster, who would introduce the session.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you. So greetings from school to everyone, and thank you for joining us on this platform. Before I begin, I would like to thank all our keynote speakers, Tarun, Yash, and Vihan, the DSOBS team, and the school team for coordinating and putting this session together. This is a first in a series of sessions, like Arjun said, that we will be conducting. The objective is to further support the class of 2021 in preparing them for their college application process through this period, which has posed a number of challenges, but at the same time has brought about several opportunities. The keynote speakers today are going to touch upon their own experiences, which will provide us the much needed insight as we move ahead. This panel has been put together after taking into consideration several things that we feel should be addressed. I am, of course, going to cover a few broad themes, which are as follows before I hand it back to Arjun. The first thing that I'm going to talk about, and this is for the class of 2021 in particular, is constructive engagement. So in this current lockdown, there is an opportunity to undertake online courses, and I know that many of you are doing that. Some of you are undertaking internship programs as well. And of course, they're also being routed through the Alumni Relation Office, which Arjun has pointed out. Remember that whatever you do, please keep the evidence and share all details with the careers team in school, who will then liaise with your referees as they work on your recommendations. A number of masters in school now have started working on the recommendations that are being required for universities and application processes as well. The careers team will brief you a bit more about that later on. The second thing that I want to talk about is transcripts. Now, transcripts are of great significance. In the given COVID-19 scenario, where many universities, in the US particularly, have gone test optional, your internal exams will carry a lot of weightage. The holistic program of the school, which despite the current challenges, we continue to offer through our online platforms for students to participate and engage with, will be the game changer and the differentiator. For the class of 2020, that is the batch above you, the one that has just graduated from school, the internal assessments, mock exam performances, past academic track records became vital for grading and scoring by both the ISC and the IBDP. The same will also apply to a significant extent to the class of 2021. The third thing that I want to talk about are the important aspects to consider. Things such as work ethics, consistency. These are things that university admission offices have a look at. They also look at your track record, and if you can demonstrate the evidence of consistency and commitment, it adds a lot of value. You will also have to be careful about the commitment to the time required for your college application process. Trust me, it's a very time consuming process. And I know a number of parents also engage in that, and so does the school team. Remember that graduate schools, and if you're in India or anywhere else in the world, they could even be referred to as postgraduate colleges, and in the US as graduate schools, they look at your past records even up to school. Just about every week, there is some kind of verification requirement that comes to my desk where we have to verify somebody who passed out in the class of 2012 or it's when people go in for one job to the other. The employers ask for confidential verification to manage and check the accuracy of what you are submitting in your CV. You have to be realistic is another very important aspect that you should consider. You have to keep options open. Don't burn your bridges. But most importantly, you have to have a match between aspirations and interest. And your aspirations and interest have to be supported with a body of work. The fourth thing that I want to talk about is things that get in the way. What gets in the way of getting into the college that you're looking at? What gets in the way of your dreams, for the lack of a better phrase, would be unrealistic aspirations. Living someone else's dream, just because my friend is doing that, just because X or Y says we should do that, you have to be very mindful of that. You have to choose your own career. You have to create your own path. Not meeting predicted grades is one big thing that really gets in the way. And I think everybody is aware of that. Taking your foot off the pedal, especially when you get an unconditional offer from a university abroad. Now, I just want to say there's nothing like an unconditional offer. This concept of an unconditional offer requires a deeper dive. Universities reserve the right of rescinding an offer in case you do not meet your predicted grades, no matter what the situation is. And the fifth point, therefore, that I want to cover on is the concept of predicted grades itself. So, university admission officers, when they read applications, they read them in the context of a curriculum. They do not compare two different curriculums with each other. Please be careful of that. They look at each curriculum separately. If you opted for the ISC, they would look at the ISC. If you opted for the IBDP program, they would look at that. In school, we are constantly evolving our system of predicted grades, and it is more process-driven and evidence-based than it has been before. Having said that, the focus is on ownership, accountability, and credibility. The educational leadership team in school will be having a separate session with the batch of 2021 on this in the next few weeks. Universities look at predicted grades as an indicator of potential based on consistency and other evidence as demonstrated by the candidate. Unconditional offers have riders, and universities over the past 3 years now have started to ask for pre-board marks. The Careers Office is proactively communicating and reaching out to university admission offices in India and abroad. The Careers Bulletin will continue like last term to keep you updated. We are also going to continue with individual sessions for statement of purposes and call it essays, carrying forward the work from last term, all right? So I just want you to be aware that these lines of communication also will be open in terms of if you have any need or any support, please feel free to get in touch with the Careers team. I'm also on a tight leash from Arjun because he told me, sir, timing is going to be very important in this conversation. And I think I've stuck to that, Arjun, okay? So thank you. I'm now handing it back to Arjun.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahuja. And very quickly, I would like to introduce Mr. Rahul Kohli, the president of the Doon School Old Boys Society, to just address the gathering. Thank you.
Rahul, you're on mute.
Thanks, Tarun. Okay, good evening, everyone. And welcome to this very first seminar of ours. I thought a lot about what I was going to say. Now, what's going to happen is going forth in this is you have three absolutely brilliant speakers ahead of me. And so I'm not even going to try and address what happens in college. I'm going to just try and give you some sort of an overview as to how far we've actually come. When I left college, when I left school, I actually forgot to apply for college. I went off to Calcutta and I spent 4 or 5 months there, hanging out with my friends. College admissions came and went, and all of a sudden I realized that I hadn't applied for college. And so my mother called her elder sister, and her elder sister called a friend, and I was given 2 options. Did I want to study English at St. Stephen's, or did I want to do mathematical statistics at Hindu College? I mean, that's what it took to get into university in those days. 1 phone call. The world has come a very long way. And today, all of you have career counselors, you have internships, and the interaction between the old boys society and the school has grown. Tarun has done this absolutely fabulous job of running the internships program from our side, and he's done it year upon year quite selflessly. And I look at the journey that we've taken. When I was in school, there was no concept of what you were going to do in university. There was a vague idea, yeah, you would do either arts or science. A few people had some inkling, and everybody sort of trundled along. And then you joined a company and life went on. And it was a very different world that I joined. But the world that you are joining is a very different one. It is a world that is beset by the most enormous inequalities of wealth. It is a world that is beset with climate change, which is rapidly coming your way. If in the next 10 years we do not meet our goals for carbon reduction, the whole world will be in absolute turmoil. In 20 years, you may not even actually have a world to go back to. You are going to have a world that is going to look at genetic engineering as something quite normal. They're going to look at human genome editing as the best way to get ahead for your child. It's going to come. There will be huge battles on ethics. There will be huge challenges posed to all you young people by artificial intelligence. And this is the world that you are going to be entering into. So where are you going to go in it? This is something you must look at very carefully. You must look 5 years down the road. You must look 10 years down the road. And 10 years down the road is a very frightening scenario. So look hard. Don't just join any old course. I mean, today Watson, which is the IBM AI, does a very good job of, probably does a better job than your normal doctors of interpreting tests. I mean, if you look at where artificial intelligence is going, the challenges forced to you by the careers you will choose, that is something you must pay great attention to. So there will be ethical choices, and probably ethics is going to be one of the greatest battlegrounds. So perhaps law, ethical choices that you will make, who you are going to be and grow as a human being. So these are 5 or 6 different things you must look at as a person, your personal growth, because that is how you may be judged. Because the machines will probably in the next 20 years be far more intelligent than you. They will take far better decisions than you will be able to make. So, are you kind? Are you forgiving? Are you straightforward? Are you content? And are you honest? These are the questions, and this is the way forward, perhaps. And this is something you must actually take into great consideration of how you grow as a human being and how you will be judged going forward. You will not be judged by your wealth. You will not be judged by your position. You will be judged by who you are. And with those happy words, Arjun, I come right back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kohli, and very valid inputs. I think it is the human element which the machines can never replicate. And we are lucky to have studied in an institution where values are taught to a child the day he enters on the gates of Chandbagh. And I'm sure his value learning has actually begun at home. So it's just a evolution which carries on. Thank you. Very valid points. Next up, we would actually like to call upon our career counselor, Mr. Ajay Tayade, who would kind of set tone to the conversations which we expect. He would like to raise some of the collective challenges which he's addressed or heard, which have come to him through the parents and the students. And that would actually just help the speakers hone on to the type of information which the students and the families are actually looking forward to. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you so much. Good evening, Headmaster, respected faculty members of the school, esteemed members of the DSOBS, and students. We are all going through an unprecedented times and disruption in the in-person school experience. But as they say, the online interaction through the virtual platform is the new normal. I'm going to share some of my insights about the concerns, anxieties that my students in the past few months have shared with me, which will help the speakers share their insights. For the class of 2020, we just graduated, cost was a major concern. With many businesses being affected, students missing out on on-campus experience this semester, a different timeline of the online classes and the cost of was a major concern which parents shared with us, with the careers department. Many of them were not comfortable with the hefty fee they had to pay for their online education. Although most decided to go with the plan, a few have started to think beyond the abroad education and studying in India. The rising US political scenario is also something which today's parents are most worried. And I would like Vihan to share more insight with us on these aspects, as the class of 2021 are also thinking on the same line. They are also creating a wider country options for themselves. India, Singapore, UK, Canada seems to have more inquiries from students than ever before. Testing. With almost all colleges going test options this year for fall 2021 admissions, students and parents are concerned whether to report the available scores or not. Universities have assured that due to this extraordinary circumstances, students seeking to enroll at a university beginning August can submit their application without their test scores. This will be true to both early decision as well as regular decision rounds of review. But application readers have confirmed that they will have increased scrutiny over the application material, looking at different evidence of excellent academic preparation, challenging courses, excellent grade in high school, evidence of commitment and effort to pursuing other challenging learning experiences, results of other examinations or other college preparatory coursework which they have pursued over the past summer, care, craft, and authenticity in their writing submissions when they write their essays, and wherever practical, available, and detailed insight analysis from the school counselors are something which universities are going to look at very closely without the availability of the test scores. Like the deputy headmaster said, mock examinations and preliminary examination scores can also be made available to students for their applications. Arjun has already given me a signal. The last point which I wanted to make was the limitations of activity which students face this summer. So I would like the guest speakers today to address this concern, how our students can profile their applications and show the Doon School's curriculum effectively. Over to you, Arjun. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. I would like to invite Mr. Debasish Chakrabarti, our Deputy Head Academics, to also just share some light on the academic perspective we would like the speakers to share. Over to you, Deb.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Careers team and the Old Boys Society for organizing this program. This is really fantastic. One in the long run of many. Thank you, Yash, Tarun, Vihan for being here. Thank you, Rahul, for this lovely word. So I'll begin from where Rahul, left off, the ethics part of it. I think that's inbuilt into the curriculum as we follow it at the Doon School. It's a part of our code of honesty. It's a part of our working process. And the working process becomes very critical when we are looking at college applications this year. My students who are amongst the audience will perhaps be smiling at themselves because I think I've bored them enough times repeating this message over and over again that the internal assessments are critical. This is what makes or breaks this batch and the previous one. And the whole point is that how you complete the critical, how you complete the IAs are also very critical. Therefore, deadlines are becoming the differentiator. The sooner you finish the work and the work is complete and you've incorporated the feedback, you can use these documents, whether it is ISC or IB, if they are done well, if they are done with a certain amount of integrity, and they have the edge, the subject knowledge edge, which you bring to the assignment anyway, they become publish-worthy materials. They are something which you can share with, at the moment, webinars. You can go ahead and do that, but only after you have submitted the work to school. So deadlines are becoming the differentiator. The third thing which I would like to talk about is the portfolio. The portfolios are an edge provider. They are what record what Rahul and Kamal talked about, what Ajay also mentioned. They are what record your reflection. It is how you are linking your academic journey, your journey in school, to the life ahead, to your passions, to the courses you are selecting. What have you done and gone ahead and done about that? How have you worked on your passion and the reflection process of that? Whether you have done an internship, how has that internship built you as a human being? These are things which start becoming differentiators when college, counselors are reading your applications. So three things once again, I promised Arjun I'll be short. IAs are critical. Deadlines become differentiator, and portfolios provide you the edge. And once you have these three bases covered, I think you're set for college. Over to you, Ajay.
Brilliant, Dabsa. That was really well in time. Okay, so before we start asking the speakers the questions, I would just like to tell all students and parents, if there are any questions you would like to note along the conversations, just please type them into the chat. Send it out to everyone, not just me individually. And we will, as a team, be just picking up the most important and the most relevant questions and then posing them. We have a 15-minute slot after the conversations to answer your questions. So I would like to get straight to the speakers now and very quickly ask them in this order. I would be asking Vihan first, then Tarun and Yash to just share a little bit about their journey from school till date, where they are. I know I just told a couple of lines, but they could just tell us a bit more. So over to you, Vihan.
Good evening, everyone. Lovely to be here. And I think this is a great seminar, and I want to thank the DSOBS for organizing it. Great to see my old masters. Great to meet the new headmaster and speak with such great speakers. So I actually grew up in the United States. I grew up in Philadelphia. My whole family went to Doon, and we're all very proud Doscos. And so my dad signed me up for Doon when I was, I think, 3 weeks old. So I knew I was going to head to Doon straight away. I love my experience in Doon. I had a blast there, learned so much. After Doon, I actually chose to study public policy, which is it's basically an economics background, and then you study a government policy of your choice. So I studied energy and environmental policy at Stanford. After that, I decided to work in India for 3 years in an education startup that was working to provide interactive learning to students who are studying maths and science. And that was a very interesting experience. I got to work in a lot of different roles, whether it be sales, marketing, business development, and legal work. It was there that I found my passion for law and applied to law schools, and currently am in law school. So I can give you a lot of perspective on what it's like to be actually in school during these COVID times, where my school itself has migrated to online learning. And currently I'm actually working for the US government for, I'm doing a summer internship with them, working for the Securities Exchange Commission. And what they do is regulate the stock market and prevent fraud from happening. So we work on cases like insider trading, Bitcoin cases and cryptocurrency cases, and offerings fraud. And my supervisors themselves have prosecuted a bunch of high-name celebrities like Martha Stewart, Floyd Mayweather, Kevin Hart, and the founder of the Fire Festival. So it's a very interesting job, and I would love to speak to anyone who is interested in legal work as well. And yes, very excited to talk to you guys.
Thanks, Vihan. I would ask Tarun to just take it ahead.
Thanks, Arjun. First and foremost, I want to thank the headmaster and the deputy headmaster and you as well, Arjun, for all your support in terms of putting together this event. I have the pleasure and privilege of wearing the hat of the Vice President of the DSOBS at present. But let me just start off from school. I graduated, I'm battered 1991. I spent a year after that at a crammer, which is a fancy word for a school in Cambridge, doing my A-levels. That was a condensed program. So at that point in time, the ISC was simply insufficient for getting into Oxbridge as your first degree. Having cleared those A-levels successfully, I got in to Emmanuel College, Cambridge, spent 3 wonderful years there. I read economics, which was an excellent choice. And later on in this conversation, I'm happy to share what my thought process was in terms of selecting that as an option. I had, at the same time, applied to a few East Coast universities, and I had the privilege of actually making a big decision at that point in time, whether I wanted to be educated in the United States at one of the top Ivy Leagues or at Cambridge. And my selection, of course, was Cambridge, and I will talk about that subsequently. After graduating from Cambridge, I spent a little bit of time in investment banking. I spent some time in industry, and then that was both in India. And then I moved back to the UK and worked as a management consultant for a few years. It gave a wonderful and broad perspective in the late 90s of how business was being done. It was the birth of the tech boom at that point in time. And so to watch the genesis of an upcycle, an economic upcycle, so closely was a great privilege. And it was a very interesting experience. I applied to a few business schools and decided to attend Wharton in 2000, spent two years there, and completed my MBA in finance and private equity. It was an extremely, extremely interesting experience, very different from an undergraduate experience. And I would, while at this session, we're talking about what's next for you, an undergraduate education. I would highly recommend that you also start thinking about any postgraduate ideas that you have in your mind from now. That genesis really needs to start from now. And that process should be clicking the moment you get into undergraduate university. After graduating from Wharton, I've been working with Triveni in India. I have, over the last 20 years, grown parts of the business. I've established an alcohol and bioenergy vertical. I've established some power plants and some engineering assets for the company domestically and a few in Europe. But besides that, I think it's really about what else one can do. And the DOSCO education, coupled with all the other interesting universities that I've attended, really helps you channelize your energies outside the workplace. And I think that's very, very vital in terms of leading a fulfilling and rewarding life. So, I'm involved with the arts. I sit on the International Council of the Tate Museum in the UK. I'm involved in several philanthropic organizations. The biggest, of course, is the DSOBS, which I'm very happy to have been associated with for some time now. And going forward, I will be as well. I have been extremely passionate about advocacy for the various industries that I've involved in. And I have been involved with my other alma mater. So I've talked about the Doon School. I interviewed for Wharton for 15 years. I have assisted the Oxford and Cambridge Society of India in their scholarship programs, in awarding scholarships to bright young students from India. Sadly, not enough students from the Doon School over the last 20, 25 years that I've done that. I've also worked with my college, Emmanuel, in terms of their outreach to India and to the subcontinent, and how to attract more bright young people to get educated at Cambridge, etc. So all interesting things. That's a little bit about me. Thanks, Arjun.
Wonderful, Tarun. Yash, very quickly, I'll bring you in.
Yes. Good evening, Headmaster, Deputy Headmaster, Mr. Debasish, Tarun sir, Rahul sir, everybody, and everyone who's joined us. So I think this is the first question, and where we have to give our own background. Now, I'm a first generation DOSCO. I joined school in 2001 with no parent, uncle, relative, grandparent in Doon School. So it was very new to me. And I come from a part of the country which I think had only 2 to 3 DOSCOs, so there was no prior. So I just took a leap of faith and came to school. From school, I went to St. Stephen's College to do BA Honours in History. Now, this is particularly interesting because when I brought mathematics in class 10 itself, there were people who were asking me that, so I think, are you on course to becoming a tourist guide? So I think that's how I think even the most prestigious schools or most prestigious societies see humanities education on the side. But of course, I think history honors in St. Stephen's did well. It was a good experience studying in India. It was a quintessential undergraduate India experience, which I will talk about later. After St. Stephen's College, I went to Oxford University for a 1-year Master's in South Asia Studies. Again, it's a pure humanities discipline. After I came back from Oxford in the year 2011, I joined the Chief Minister's office in the government of Gujarat. I was there for 3 years, and for the last 6 years, I'm in the government of India. I'm working in the Prime Minister's office right now. I'm going to speak more about career education and career opportunities in India, why I think we should consider an Indian education, especially because of the current scenario and in general as well. Along with these degrees, I also have a LLB degree from Gujarat University. I would be very happy to talk about that also later. So I think that's about it on my background, and I think we can get into the other parts of the sessions.
Excellent. So let's get straight into the most important part about admissions for the class of 2021. And the first question I would like to put out in front of the speakers is, what, in your opinion, made your application successful for being accepted in your undergraduate course? Further, how can you let the class of 2021 know how to leverage the Doon School education to make their application stand out? Vihan, would you like to answer that first?
Sure, I'm very happy to answer that question. So for me particularly, what made my application stand out was the fact that I was an American student who came to India and was able to thrive in a new environment, which poses its own challenges. I had the ability to adapt to different cultures, and a lot of my application spoke about living in different cultures, migrating, and being able to be adaptable and versatile. Aside from that, I think what's necessary for any university is very strong academics, passion for what you're doing, demonstrated leadership. So, you know, if you're interested in the arts, are you taking an active role in seeking opportunities outside the school? Are you promoting the arts within the school? Same thing for sports. And the last thing that I think is highly important are your application essays. And if this is a good juncture, I would actually like to specifically talk about application essays because they are crucial to American universities. And it is the one thing that you can work on starting now and do an amazing job with, because it is essential to providing the human side for an application reviewer. So my first piece of advice is start early. Mr. Ahuja said this very well. You need to work on multiple drafts of your essays. I wrote around 6 to 10 drafts per essay. And I mean, when I was attending college, I had to write about, I think, 10 or 12 different essays. So it takes a lot of time. My next piece of advice actually on this is come into an essay with the main idea that you want to come across. What is the main idea that you want your reader to take away? And once you have that idea in your mind, then you can build your essay out. When the person reads your essay, they should feel like this is an actual person speaking, not a robot, because when they're reading the rest of the application, it's kind of a list of things. But when it comes to your recommendations and your essays, this is a time to show your own personal voice, and that is essential. My other piece of advice is you're better off not telling them about yourself, but showing them about yourself. And what that means is stories are the most powerful way that we can communicate. And especially your undergraduate application essay, the Common App essay, needs to be a story. And through that story, they understand about you, things about you. Looking back on it, I think I would boil down a great essay into 3 C's. The first C is conciseness. The essays that you write for college are very short, and the word limit is not your friend. You need to be very concise about the way you write. You don't want to waste any words, and you need to be very intelligent about how you use your words. The second C that comes to my mind is clarity. Application reviewers don't have much time to read your essay. So, I mean, they're going through a whole application in 10 to 15 to 20 minutes. And so your essay needs to be very, very clear about what it is. So avoid long sentences. That can be very tricky. Make it easy for the reader to understand the essay and lead the reader where you want to take them. And the last C that comes into my mind is connections. And what I mean by connections is you need to make connections both internally in your writing mechanics, which means does one paragraph flow to another? Do sentences make sense? Is it well written? And the other thing is connections need to happen to the rest of your application. And I think it might have been Mr. Chakrabarti or Mr. Ahuja who mentioned this, but your essay is a chance to kind of highlight things that you want to show. And so if you, within your essay, can show the connections to the rest of your application and build out a great essay, that's the best way to take it forward. I think the other question that was posed is, how do you leverage the Doon School education to make your application stand out? And Doon is very, very unique. So there are a bunch of topics that you could kind of write about in your essays. You can talk about how Doon forces you to juggle multiple hats, how you in a certain day are doing 10 different topics. So you become an all-rounded individual, which is unique. I mean, a lot of students, especially in the United States, are specialized. They know what they want to do and they kind of become excellent at 1 or 2 things, but there is a lot of value to an all-rounded education. And that's something you can speak about. The other things that come to my mind are the active leadership roles that you can have, that we take in school, whether you're a boy in charge of something, whether you're a prefect, a house captain, a school captain. These are all very valuable things that will serve you not only in your application process, but also in the rest of your life. Other topics come to mind that are teamwork, you know, inter-house stuff that happens all the time, competitiveness, commitment to service, an aristocracy of service, as we speak about in the Doon School. So I think you can, when you build out your application, these are all certain things that you can think about. So yes, that is my perspective on the application process.
Very, very helpful. Thanks, Vihan. Next, I would like to call Mr. Tarun.
Right. Well, Vihan's taken a whole bunch of things that I was going to mention. So thank you. But I will provide a different perspective, because applying to the UK is a totally different ballgame. Okay. It is not as intense of an experience. You have a common form. It's been the same for 3-4 decades. And the form is a fairly simple one to approach. You have a limit in the number of institutions that you can apply. So unlike other parts of the world where you can apply to an unlimited number of institutions, UCAS form does limit your choice. And I think the first decision that you have to make, and before I talk about what helped me make my own decision, but the advice that I would give is that know where you want to go. Even in a small country like the UK, you have an innumerable number of institutions that offer a completely different experience. Now, given the times that we're in right now, I could hardly suggest that you go and visit Edinburgh and St. Andrews and Oxford and Cambridge and Bath. That's just not possible. But there are many other ways of trying to get that experience. One of them is through the Old Boys Society, because we have many members of the Old Boys Society that have been to these institutions. But it's also important to use their online platforms and to engage with their faculty and their admissions staff in terms of gaining an appreciation of how that university is different, how they differ from one another. For me, economics at Cambridge was a no-brainer. I was excited about the fact that I could attend a university. Well, I liked economics. I think I was very set and focused on reading a particular subject. And if you have that type of focus that you want to do one particular subject, then a UK education is, let me put it this way, should be very high on your list. Okay. If you don't know what you want to read, if you don't know what is the area of interest, then there are many other options. But in the UK, once you've selected a particular subject, you have to stick with it for the duration of your course, be it 3 or 4 years. For me personally, the opportunity to study where Keynes, Marshall, Amartya Sen, Joan Robinson, Nikki Caldo, it was a treat to be able to do that. And I must say that we had our fair share of finance ministers of India who've also been to Cambridge. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I leave up to you. But nevertheless, I thought this would be something that was in it for me. So that was why there was a very simple process, a very simple decision that I needed to make. Once I had made that, and that was the subject choice, everything else sort of slotted in. So I would advise not to overcomplicate the situation. It is a daunting task, but you must try and simplify it. Otherwise, there are far too many distractions, far too many choices, and far too many pressures that you will face and that can waylay you. Now, let me talk about how you can leverage the Doon School education. And please do bear in mind that I graduated almost 30 years ago. So, it was a slightly different time at that point because, India was still, the diversity factor of coming from India was still quite attractive. Now you have students that come from all over the world. That simple diversity factor is very, very different. But the important thing about the Doon School education was the fact that it made you into a whole individual. It gave you, as Vihan said just before, an opportunity to pursue social work, entrepreneurship, leadership roles, incredible team working assignments, sports, spare time activities, etc. The choices that are part and parcel of the curriculum is something that every DOSCO before me and certainly after me has had to go through. But today, very honestly speaking, I would guide you to, that is not enough, okay? You can certainly talk about it. It makes it very pleasant. And when you come to your interview, which is an essential part of this process, and even in the UK, it's a very, very important part, I have to advise you that that you must find areas of specialty. It is finding those areas of specialty and then developing knowledge around that that will serve you very well. Because otherwise, having a diversified portfolio only gets you through the door. But what gets you a seat at the table is really the ability to be able to talk about a subject. So for the UK, I would advise, know the subject that you want to talk about. If it is economics, know what in economics excites you, why you want to read economics, what is it that you want to achieve through the course of this degree, why do you want to attend that university. It's an absolutely vital part of your application. The one other point I'd like to make in the UCAS application, because you only get one essay, and that essay can't be customized to one particular university. It's more about an experience sharing perspective of yourself. You know, it has to be, rather than 6 essays, you get one opportunity. And so you have to think about it very, very hard of how you would write about yourself, how you would advocate your candidacy to a bunch of universities, okay, that are looking for different things. So it's a very difficult application to pull. The opportunity that you get, frankly speaking, is your resume, because you get to send in your resume. Your resume gives you an opportunity to show that you have a variety of interests, but there are certain areas where you truly excel. And I would suggest that you use your time at school and the spare time that you have during your holidays in terms of building 1 or 2 core areas that you can talk about at length with some degree of authority. And the third and final thing that I will say is that the only other part of the application is your LOR. And so your essay and your resume must tie in with your LOR. Now, there's no way of knowing what your letter of recommendation will be. But the person that you ask to write your letter of recommendation, you need to understand who that person is. You need to actually select that person very carefully, because there has to be a story. It's a journey really that you go on over the next few months in submitting this application. And there shouldn't be any loose ends effectively. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to Arjun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yash, I'm sure you have a very different way how your application was successful.
Yeah, I think talking about an Indian education means that I don't think the other 2 speakers say what you have to say before you, because I think there's a lot of difference in how they've dealt with their application, how I dealt with my application. In my time, I did not have, I had 6 applications, out of which the best 4 of my applications were taken. No, I mean, by that I mean my ISC exams, and my best 4 subjects were enough for me to apply to the college of my choice. Completely nameless, faceless application these were, because the person who's evaluating a board exam doesn't know your name, doesn't know your face. So no, on a serious note, I think broadly speaking, I think in India, broadly the application system is very different because of the whole emphasis on cutoffs. And wherein your one exam, which is your one ISC exam, becomes disproportionately very important for a student to get into a college in India. This is good, and this has its disadvantages also. I think, of course, the advantages for DOSCOs is that I think you will not find anything as convenient as just doing well in one exam and landing up in a good university. You don't have letters of recommendation from your teachers if you never had any good, if you were one of the more non-serious or non-lendy students, then I think I think ISC is your way to go, because no recommendation, no CV, no nothing. So I think that's one part of it. No, on a serious note, I think, so that's the cutoff approach. And now with universities like Ashoka, with more private universities coming in, there is a component of application like how the UK and the US do it. So, but that is still very, very less. And I think it is very, very competitive. And then there's a third type of process of the entrance tests. I think the CLAT is one example of that, the Common Law School Entrance Test in India, if you want to do the 5-year law exam. There is, of course, the IIT and the medical exam also, but I am not exactly sure how many DOSCOs who stay on in 11th and 12th go that path. Of course, I know law is a very popular stream to go there, but by and large, yes, it is only your cutoffs which matter. So your ISC becomes very, very important. And I think sadly our university systems in India, be Delhi University, Bombay University, universities in Bangalore, they have not yet evolved into a system where things like predicted grades, recommendations matter. So I think in my case the application was very simplistic in terms of just giving one exam. I think I was fine with that, but I'm told now the cutoffs are people get 99% and 98%, and then you ask them, they'll say, no, I expected 97 but I got 98. So I think you're competing in a very different and a fiercely competitive setup right now, where a college like St. Stephen's, even a 94% in humanities is considered to be not a very good score. So the disadvantage of this is that now the competition has become very, very high for prestigious universities. How the Doon School network helps in such a scenario, I don't have an answer to that in the Indian context, because most of Delhi University has no interviews, it's purely cut off. There is no other way to determine that. But I think where Doon School does help you in when you make that transition is, I think the school equips you to handle a wide range of challenges. I think a DOSCO on a given day is, I think, starting from the beginning, starting from when you're woken up forcefully to go for PT till lights out. I think you are parallelly, I think multiple fronts are open. There are you're doing, there's academics, there's seniors, there's form mates, there's sports, there's you're managing multiple things. So I think that's a skill which is very, very handy when you shift to campus life, which school teaches you. I think school teaches you, believe it or not, humility. What happens is, I think I would come to that a little later. I think the transition, especially from SC form, where in a campus of 72 acres, you are everything. You are school captain, your house captain, your prefect, your sportsman, you are a whole lot of things. From there, you suddenly come into first year, which is D form equivalent, with people from different parts of the country, many of whom are not many of you are very envious of the education you've been lucky to have. So I think, but at the same time, Doon School equips you to deal with these challenges very well. I think the foundations are very strong. Another side to applications in India is a sports quota, wherein if you've had the privilege of representing your state or the nation in any of the sports, I think you do have a lot of opportunities which open for you. So yes, broadly speaking, in terms of the application, to just sum up my thoughts, it is heavily faceless, it is nameless, it is fiercely competitive, and with a very few universities here. And there's some islands which have now taken to applications, like how universities in the US and UK are conducting this. So I'll be happy to answer your questions on that later. But yeah, it just underscores the importance of academics in everything. I mean, of course, it's very good. You have a blazer, you have boys in charge, you have a lot of things. These train you for a lot of other things. But I think from an India point of view, your 11th and 12th, your SNSC form become disproportionately important. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yes, I do totally second Yash. I did my college in India as well. I think some of my form mates got helped because in those days, the Bombay University lists used to come out in a very short notice the moment the results came. And 3-4 of them managed to scramble their way into St. Xavier's, while most of us were still standing in Delhi University lines, and which in summertime is really hot usually to be standing physically. Okay, so I move on to the next question. Is from your perspective, what are the college recruitment panels looking for in students? I know we briefly touched upon it, but we would just like to refine this one step forward. Vihan?
Sure, I'm happy to speak about this. I had the opportunity to actually sit down with some recruitment officers. I had a talk with one at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And it's a very interesting takeaway, and I think it's very important for you guys to think about. First of all, as I said before, admissions officers are going through loads of applications. And you want to make sure that they come away with the feeling that you're going to be a great asset to the university. Now, the way that admissions officers actually treat student applications is kind of like startups, right? It's which startup do we choose to invest in? And they're looking for a successful student. And what do you mean? And it's important to think about what they perceive a successful student to be. So the first way of being a successful student, at least in the US colleges, is, are you going to succeed academically? And are you going to actively contribute to the community while you're there? So are you going to do research? Are you going to be involved in their music, their arts, their student organizations, their charities, their sports? The second thing that universities will think about is, what is the likelihood that you're going to have long-term success? Because eminent alumni from the university reflect great on the university. So this is where your demonstration of passion and desire, and as Tarun said, a certain specialization in one or two things, this can be very helpful in helping an admissions officer go to bat for you. Because the way it works, at least in the US, is that once they've kind of siphoned off a few of the students and shortlisted candidates, you literally have a bunch of admissions officers sitting around a table, and you need your admissions officer, your reader, to advocate for you. So they're going to think about, you know, are you going to have success in the rest of your career, and evaluate you on that front. And the final thing, which is also interesting to think about, is that universities do rely on donations. So they are going to also evaluate what is the likelihood that you're going to donate to the university. And so for that, it's, are you going to have financial success? Are you tied into the university? Do you care about the university? These are all things that you wouldn't think about at the time, but universities are very financially savvy, and this is something that they do think about. So your engagement, your level of passion, your willingness to be part of a community, these are all things that demonstrate your success in school, in the university, your long-term success, and the likelihood that you're going to be a very valuable alumni. So please, when you're crafting your application, think about how the reader is going to perceive you. You have 20 minutes to show off the best side of yourself. So be very, very clear about what you want to present, how you want to present it, and make it very easy for them to see these things come through. And if you do get the chance to interview with any of these recruitment officers or admissions officers, demonstrating passion, desire, perseverance, hard work, these are all essential components. And I have no doubt that when you think about your own application, you're going to understand, you know, what is the type of person that I am? And how do I present myself? It's all about that. It's all about making things easy for the reader to understand, and using your entire application to craft a coherent and clear story. So that's what I have to say on that matter.
Thanks, Vihan. Over to you, Mr. Sawhney.
Right. So, you know, the UK is ever so slightly different, with the possible exception of Oxford and Cambridge, which have, over the last, let's say, 20 years, they've become, they've embraced the US style of assessing applications a lot more. And they've looked at, and they are looking at characteristics that Vihan pointed out with, and gave a lot of merit to those very characteristics or rather a significant weightage. And so that's something for everybody to bear in mind. But the broader section of British universities focus primarily on academics. And so I would say that academics really is the most vital performance indicator. Most of the offers that are given are conditional. They're conditional based on achieving a certain milestone. In the IB program or in the ISC program, it would mean specific marks. And so it means continued study at the SC form level throughout until you finish with school. It's really about not taking your foot off the gas. And I think the message that even the deputy headmaster was making earlier is absolutely clear. You cannot afford to take your foot off the gas when you're in school, okay? That boat has sailed. You have to focus on getting the best possible marks, because everybody's checking and everybody's very, very acutely aware. And the circumstances that we find ourselves in today amidst this crisis makes selection even harder. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's reading an application. The first port of call has to be accredited academic results in any form. So in the UK, I would say that has never been more important And for any of you that want to apply to the UK, that's got to be a significant percentage of your package. The next thing, of course, is how well you communicate why you want to go to that university and what you want to read there. You have to understand why you want to actually study a mathematics, astronomy, classics, a language, whatever you want to do at university, you must have a clear and concise story about why you want to pursue that endeavor. Because you don't get the advantage of a liberal arts education that you might in North America. So you have to be able to communicate that very, very effectively. I know that there are many, and this is something that you can even consider at this point because you have a full year ahead. There are many British boarding schools that encourage students to do something called an EPQ. Okay, this fits in. It doesn't fit in with the IB program. It fits in with the A-level program. And this is just an advice to some of the parents that are on the call today. And the EPQ is basically an extended project qualification. It's a very new thing. It started off in the last two and a half decades. But what it does is it conveys a level of detail that the applicant or a student or any of you have gone through in a particular subject. It shows that you have dedicated certain amount of time in gaining an appreciation on a particular subject, and it makes your application that much more interesting. It is usually, if you have an interview that is associated with the college that you apply to in the UK, it is usually going to be, your EPQ is certainly going to be an area that the interviewer will spend some time on. He will want to know why you've chosen it, what excites you about it, how you are going to link this with your potential college degree or with how you want to lead your life. At Oxbridge, etc., it's not just about the academics. Your interview can go in 15 different ways. I've heard stories for 30, 40 years before I went to university, and certainly for the 25 years after I graduated, of absolutely crazy interviews. So it's very different from North America. You could be asked a whole host of different questions. It could be on religion, it could be on science, it could be on sports, it could be on a whole host of things, but that comes back together. It's usually done in this wonderfully British manner. But the objective is the same. It's to really try and understand you as an applicant. So I would say that if you're applying to different continents, you've got to prepare differently. So you cannot prepare the same way that you would prepare for the US or for India as the same way you would prepare for applications to the UK.
So I actually just want to jump in quickly on Tarun's point about being focused academically. I cannot emphasize this enough. You cannot take your foot off the gas, as the other speakers have said. Universities, unfortunately, we had a DOSCO get into one of the best universities in the world, didn't get his predicted grades, and the offer was rescinded. Furthermore, universities do not forget about these things. And you have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to the rest of the Doon School. Because when further Doon School applicants apply down the road, and schools are willing to blacklist Doon. So not that I know of that happening, but please, when you get your predicted grades, you have to meet them, because universities will definitely look into that and are willing to rescind offers.
Yeah, very valid point. Yash, would you like to add on something?
Yeah. Very brief. Again, since most Indian universities don't have the interview stage, but I think St. Stephen's College has an interview. Ashoka University has interviews. Having given a St. Stephen's interview myself, I would say, everyone, the other two speakers have elaborated, but I think there's 2-3 things you need when you're giving interviews. I think anywhere, I think in the US, in the UK, or in India. The first is honesty. I think one thing you have to understand is the person who's interviewing you, or the panel that is interviewing you, knows more about the subject than you. So if there's no harm, there's absolutely no harm if you have asked a tough question, you say, "Sir, I'm not, or ma'am, I'm not aware of this." The more you get into saying something which you're not sure about, opening them to cross question you on that, I think you are harming your own application tremendously. So if there's something you don't know, nip it in the bud, say, "No, I'm not aware of this." As simple as that. The second thing is, I think a humility helps. This is particularly important again, because as I said in the last leg, you're very big in your SC form. so that transition, you have to understand, you again, it's like SC form to D form. You keep that in mind. So when you're interacting with teachers, fellow students, so even when you're going for that interview, I think a lot of humility is very helpful when you're making your point. And I think in continuation to what Tarun sir said, because I think even St. Stephen's, they may not necessarily ask you on the subject for which you're applying. So if you're applying for history honors at St. Stephen's, they may not even ask you one question related to history. I mean, they may ask you, what do you think of English literature? What do you think of religion? What do you think of so I think it's very important to be quick on your feet. Don't get nervous. Answer back, again, very with humility, but very creatively. They want out of the box answers. So I think that's something which is very important. Play to your strengths. I mean, there's no fixed there's no fixed definition of a successful interview. The advantage of an interview system is you get to set the agenda and take the interview in the direction in which you want to take it. So please play to your strengths. So that's all I'd like to add on the interview part of the.
Thank you. So I think that was very, very helpful information regarding the admissions. We'll move on to our next section, which is called Getting There. I'll change the order in which we ask the questions. Yash, you might be up first for this one. The next question is, why did you choose to study in that particular university, and what helped you decide the course which you actually selected?
Yes. I think what helped me pick the course that I selected was, again, I give full credit to Doon School, because many of us are brought up in societies and environments where humanities education is not particularly seen as very rewarding or particularly glamorous. But I think something which Doon School did right from my D form is it gave you a very broad-based view of academics, every subject, history, geography, of course the sciences, economics. So I think I credit my interest in humanities, my interest in history, my interest in literature to the foundations I got in the Doon School. The way they taught you, the way they made a subject which is quote conventionally seen as boring, a lot of dates, years, very, very interesting, with a lot of project work, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. And I can keep saying this, the atmosphere of debate, discussion, openness, speaking your societies, this is something which very few schools in India will give you. So please make the most of it. You will pick up subconsciously. You will not realize it when you're sitting there, but subconsciously, be it the Junior English, Senior English Debating Society, be it Historical Circle, be it the Weekly, be it anything, you will pick up confidence, you will pick up the ability to speak your mind to seniors, to juniors, to teachers. So I think I hold that in very, very high regard. So I think I was very clear. I dropped mathematics in class 10. And I want to tell students here that if you are not excelling in the sciences, if the sciences are beyond you, please leave them in class 10. Please say goodbye. This is very important because there's too much pressure to get into sciences. If you all can't do accounting like I couldn't do accounting, please leave commerce accounts. Please do what you like. It can be history elective, it can be commerce, it can be, of course, it could be the sciences also. So when you're, after ICSE, when you're picking your subjects for your IB, for your ISC, play to your strength, pick what you like. There are many, many career opportunities now. The careers department in the school is very helpful on those opportunities. So please, I think I'd make my point there that from your, after your A form, pick well. So that's how I got there. I picked well. My SNSC form was very good. Our humanities class had 5 students. So it was more like, in Oxbridge, you have the tutorial. So it was more like, you're sitting in a tutorial all the time. There was a lot of personalized attention, which equipped me to go to St. Stephen's. It was very useful there. After St. Stephen's, I'd say that, one of our previous headmasters, Dr. Kanti Bajpayee, started this course, which I did in Oxford, the course on South Asian Studies. So I was always in touch with him. So he said that, you're interested in history, you're interested in current affairs. This is a new thing. Now, South Asian Studies has picked up in the West, be it in the US or be it in the UK. But 10 years ago, it was just picking up. So he said, why don't you apply to this course? So it takes off right from where your history on the syllabus starts. So I applied there. And one thing which I learned in Oxford as a humanities student is, which I did not learn in St. Stephen's, is very basic things like how to write a long answer. I think in humanities, again, we are told to write longer answers than in the sciences or in the commerce accounts. And what we were in India, sadly, what we were taught is that if you fill your pages with, if you fill 10 sheets, you're through. one thing which Oxford taught me in 1 year, very late, is that it is your argument which matters. So if there's a question, give your argument, elaborate. If you have 20 readings, you have 20 readings. If you have 4 readings, you have 4 readings, but express it well and you're through. And I think this skill is not only important in academics, but also thereafter when you're professionally dealing with situations. I think it's not only more which counts, it's what matter you have. And that's something which Oxford taught me. So that's the path I took. When I joined government in post Oxford, I thought it was very helpful for me to have basic legal knowledge of how laws in India, how the legal system works. So I decided to do an LLB, which again was very useful. If you're not doing the 5-year law courses in India, I think the 3-year LLB, you do it in any of the places. I think it is broadly the same. If you do the 5-year LLB, of course, there's a very different worldview because you get a BA, BSc, BCom, and then also you get an LLB. So I think that's my trajectory. I think it was interest in history, interest in current affairs, which got me to take humanities even when it was not cool in class 11, 12, which took me to St. Stephen's for a very successful history honors, and then which took me to Oxford for South Asian studies. So it's been a very linear and a very satisfying experience, academic experience for me. Thank you.
Excellent. Tarun, what helped you choose the course which you decided to do at Cambridge?
So, as I mentioned earlier, my path was a little bit different. So having finished my ISc, I actually spent 9 months in the UK doing my A-levels. And so you can call it a quasi gap year. And I would like to just share with the students and parents that, that is another option that is also always available and something that should not be undermined. And it may be there for maybe one or two of you, but it doesn't mean that you won't get into your dream university at the end of the day. So you must remember that. For me personally, when I graduated school in 91 and then finished my A-levels in 1992, it's a very interesting time in India. There was, economic transformation at every corner. Our country really turned a bend from being a very leftist nation to being more centrist and approaching capitalism in a whole new different way, which I found very exciting. And I won't spend time on that, but I was very motivated by what I read in the papers. I was very motivated with the conversations that I was having with friends, with colleagues, with seniors, etc. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to read economics. The second reason, of course, was that I was convinced at that point in time, at the age of 17, 18, that I wanted to do an MBA. And since I wanted to do an MBA in the United States, which I felt was the best country to do the MBA, I felt to get a broader global experience, I might as well spend some time in another country. And so the UK was then my port of call, despite my applying, on both sides of the pond. I'd also lived for a year in Cambridge, which helped me ease into that system. I'd seen the colleges and the beauty and the majesty of several century-old buildings, etc. Fantastic place, much better than Oxford, by the way. And then, of course, I had some familial ties, etc. So I had some generations before me that went to the same college. But the program was really one that got me excited, and the fact that I was going to be taught by such experts, such leaders in economic thought, that was so personally motivating. Later on, of course, I worked for about 5 years before I decided to do an MBA. And in case you do want to do an MBA, I would highly encourage you, and spending a lot of time with my own my business school from various perspectives, including admissions. I would say that 4, 5, 6 years is the minimum type of experience that is required for you to truly benefit from that particular degree. There are many other postgraduate degrees where you don't need to actually work and gain quote unquote real life experience for that long. But I decided to work for about 5 years. It gave me a good breadth of the business world. It gave me exposure to different industries. It allowed me to work in different environments, in different geographies. And all of that was a great benefit in spending 2 years in a very highly competitive environment. There are two other points I'd like to make. Regardless of wherever you go, you must realize that in all the top universities or any rung of universities, you are going to come across people that are truly motivated and extremely intelligent. So this, alludes to the point that Yash was making, that when you enter in almost deform. So you should know that it's the earlier you realize that everybody is definitely a peer, the easier it is for you to shape your experience when you are at university. So there you are, Joe.
Brilliant. Vihan?
All right, I'm going to go very fast. Hopefully this thing is going to be recorded because I have a lot to say and I think we're slowly running out of time. First of all, I want to just quickly address parents' concerns about political issues in the US. I'm going to be very frank. I don't think the United States has always been the best place to study. I think now more than ever, you should definitely consider Canada, UK, and Singapore. They are great options, and the US is, these are trying times these days. I also want to highlight Tarun's point on taking a gap year. I think it is essential. I think right now more than ever, this might be the best time to take a gap year. I currently am in law school. I started off law school when it was pre-COVID, and there is a precipitous drop-off in the quality of your learning experience because so much of what you go to college for is what happens outside the classroom. It's, chatting directly to professors for coffee. It's interacting with students. It's getting involved in things. And online learning is not the best time. It's really not the best experience. And with universities not lowering the tuition costs to parents, I would say definitely take a hard look at especially considering a gap year because, who knows, a year from now, things could be much better. I chose Stanford personally because I had an interest in startups. I had an uncle who had gone to law school in Stanford, so I had family out there. And Stanford was, a university where they're basically great at everything. It's a large university. You get to meet diverse people. I'm personally from the East Coast, so for me, it was a chance to see a different part of the country, to go to California, experience something new, which is wonderful. The last thing that was really important to me was I got to play intercollegiate squash at Stanford. I got to captain Stanford squash team for 2 years in my junior and senior year. And getting involved in an organization like that, I've made lifelong friends, lifelong mentors with my coaches. I actually want to highlight Yash's point. I started off going to Stanford thinking I wanted to do public policy. Then in my second year, because Stanford had such a great engineering program, I thought, I should do engineering. So I forced myself to take engineering classes and I did woefully awfully. That was not my strength. And the good thing about the US is that you can experiment with different things. But that made me come back to public policy because that was my true passion at heart. And when you are passionate about something, the grades will come easier. The readings happen easier. You ask better questions. You're more focused and attentive in class. All of these things matter. So do pursue your passion. I think it's essential. And public policy was a great degree for me. I became interested in law consequently. I had a heavy economics background. I had great faculty. So do your research. Make sure that the university you're applying to has great faculty because making connections with faculty and networking with them, that is so, so very important. So with that, I want to turn it back over to the panel.
Thank you. Okay, Yash, next question pointed towards you. Can you briefly comment on the challenges that you faced and things that went in favor for you?
Yes, I think the first challenge which I faced was my ICSE score was 75%. So that's the first challenge I faced. So this is again a message I want to give to all those DOSCOs out there. If your ICSE score is bad, don't worry. You always have an ISC to give after that. So, don't get very burdened by the fact that, your class 10 didn't go well. I'm one of those people who had very, very bad scores in ICSE. My score in the sciences was 42%. So I want to say that. So, I think that was when you're not high up in your class, in a system which is fiercely competitive. Doon is very competitive because everything's out there. Everyone knows everyone's marks, everyone, it's all out there. So in such a system, that burden of past, I wouldn't say failure, but past not so successful phase of your life, that could be a very, very big challenge. The second challenge for an Indian applicant is, the UCAS is very simple. Tarun sir would talk more about it. but perhaps where I think Vihan and me would have some commonalities. I think you're making too many applications and time is very less. So you come back from your ISC and you have 2 months. You've had one full year of studies, but I think you have to start doing your research very fast. Delhi University may have a different process. Mumbai University may have a different process. Very, very practical things like, the Mumbai University requires a domicile certificate. Now, each state has very different rules of what counts as a domicile. In my case, I was born, in my case, the place of my birth, the place of my current residence, and the place of my class 10 were different states with very different domicile rules. So in an Indian education, there are these very, very elaborate procedural rules which can get very exasperating when you're applying. This is if you're applying to Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, Calcutta, anywhere. So I think please do your research properly. You don't want a situation where you have very good scores, but on a very technical ground, they reject you. Because the one thing about the Indian application system is, of course, in the US and the UK, you have these very approachable tutor for admissions or dean of admissions. Here, there's nothing of that sort. The person handling your application is a section officer working in some office who's overburdened with a lot of applications. So there's no real correspondence you're going to have. So you have to be very, very careful when you're applying to an Indian university from the very beginning. That's the very, very, very big challenge for an Indian university. Of course, it's become much simpler now with the law schools doing a common law entrance test, Delhi University doing a common entrance test, but it is still nonetheless very cumbersome. You're making multiple applications, giving multiple details. I think that's one challenge which I found. The second challenge students in India would face applying from an Indian to a foreign university is that if you've not earlier applied to a foreign university, the process which your fellow students would have started when they were in school, you're going to start later. So to get acquainted with that, for me, I've privately spoken to Tarun sir about it, that, from a student who had no clue of foreign university applications in my third year to understand what UCAS is, to get my head around that, that was a little bit of a challenge for me, which I think many DOSCOs would also face. So I think these are the two challenges which I faced in my academic journey. Besides that, there's no other real challenge. I think if you've got your good marks, substantial amount of a challenge is sorted. Yeah.
Brilliant. Tarun sir?
I'm going to be very brief. I think it's important to recognize that your education at Doon School is a sheltered one. Okay? And when you go out into the real world, quote unquote, there are real life pressures that are actually, you have gatekeepers, you have all your masters, you have the dames, you have everybody in school that are gatekeepers that prevent some real life pressures from facing you while you're in Chandbagh for 8 months of the year. That is very different when you go out into university. In the UK, especially, the levels of freedom that are given to a young adult are, and I've spoken to friends who have been educated all over the world, and I come back to this, that you have just the most extreme levels of freedom that are given to a young 18-year-old, okay? And it's the ability to be able to handle that freedom responsibly, ethically, and judiciously that will really shape your university career. So that's all I'd like to say.
Brilliant. Vihan?
Okay, again, I'm going to go very quickly. One of the biggest challenges is writing skills. Indian students, we aren't trained to write well. So working on your writing, look back to the points that I said. I think writing skills are essential. You have to work on them. Communication is so important. The second challenge you might face in US universities is that other students are far more specialized. What that means for you is that you not only need to work harder at things, but you need to work smarter. Think about study groups, think about going to professors, think about, what works very well is at the end of every day, spending 10 minutes to review what the hell you studied in class. So important. And at the end of the week, kind of doing that review is very important. The other challenge is that you're left on your own, and there's no one looking after you, like Tarun said. It's not, you don't have this support system. So you need to always never be afraid to ask for guidance. You can ask for guidance from your professors, from career counselors, but always ask for guidance. What's also very important is to set up a good routine. You have to set up a good routine to be successful. So slot your time, make sure you have time to study so that you can do all the fun things that you want to do, right? Universities, college in America, it's an absolute blast. And you should be able to, go out, have fun, attend sports games, go to parties. But it's very important to, when you have a routine, that will allow you time to do all those things. Students are also more mature in America. It's just their nature. So you do need to be aware of that. I have two actually very heavy things to talk about. The first is depression. Depression is a very serious issue. You're away from your parents, you're away from your family. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard adapting to a new university where you don't have your own friends. You don't have the DOSCOs that you spent the last 6 years with. So always stay in constant communication with your parents, with your family, with your friends, and reach out to sources. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling low, if you're having a bad day, it's very important to stay mentally healthy. Two other points for the modern day society. One is be very careful about everything that you do. There's cell phones and cameras everywhere. And that's not to say that you shouldn't, go out and have a good time, but be very aware of what you're doing. And there's a difference between, doing something silly and doing something that is actually immoral. And at Doon School, you are taught the difference. It's very important. You should never feel like you're doing something that goes against your own morality. The last thing, Doon is a single-sex school. We don't deal with issues, but in America, unfortunately, sexual assault is a massive, massive issue. And I don't doubt that Doon School boys will have the moral fiber to always, treat women with respect. The more important point here is that if you see something that's happening at a party, someone's putting something into someone's drink, this is actually a huge problem. And if you feel in your gut that something is wrong, even if you don't want to address it directly, please talk to someone. In America, you have lots of supervisors and resident advisors, but it is your moral duty, your moral imperative. If you see something wrong, say something about it and address it. So those are my points on the challenges that you will face in university in America.
Excellent. So we get towards the closing remarks. We call this section the road ahead. What advice would you like to share with the class of 2021 so that they're better prepared for university and life beyond school? Yash?
Yes. There's one more thing I'd like to say to what these people said. The other two speakers said that, when you shift to I'll just come to the next part. When you shift to college, at least in India, there are two things which people have towards Doon. One is, of course, awe, and the second is envy. So, they are, because they do, I don't know how to say it, but to say it very point blank, I think they don't like us very much for the privileges we come with, the quote unquote elitism we bring with us. And again, to do some very straight talking, I think the conduct of some of the DOSCOs doesn't do good to redeem that image. When you go to a college in India, you are meeting people from rural backgrounds, from caste diverse backgrounds. You may not have been exposed to these realities in Doon School. So I think they're at one level, they're awestruck because of Doon School, the alumni it brings with you, but then they're also very envious of you. So I'll again say humility, that's a very big challenge. Be humble. I said it in the context of interviews, but I also say it in the context of your daily conduct at universities, be it in Delhi, be it in Mumbai. So yes, so going to what I want to share with the class of 2021 is, I think, to begin with, I don't think any batch has been as unlucky as this batch and the batch of 2020. We've been far luckier batches. So we empathize with this batch of 2021. They've not been able to enjoy their full SC form, which is, I think, one of the best years of school. I know a DOSCO who's Tadao SC form prefect is, his father was telling me that, poor thing, one full year of SC form in prefectship is gone. So, I think this is an unlucky batch. We empathize with you. That said, I think keep your calm, keep your cool, keep the focus on studies. I'm not, unlike the other two speakers, I'm not very positive about a gap year staying in India, because at this given point of time in India, there's not much you can do when you take a gap year, because when you take a gap year, you're also doing some self-discovery, you're traveling. Right now, that's also on the down. So I think the best thing for the class of 2021 to do is that focus on your academics, focus on your applications, make very informed career choices. One of the reasons why I emphasize on an Indian education is that in such a time, an Indian undergrad education will be a very, very cost effective way of studying. You'll be very easy on the pocket when you come to studying in India. And it's not like India has bad institutions. Some of the finest minds who Tarun sir said from India who went to Oxford, Cambridge also did their undergrad in Indian universities. Many of whom have gone on to become prime ministers of India, have gone on to hold very important cabinet positions. They've done very well for themselves. So an Indian education gives you that academic foundation if you want to study. It is very affordable, uh, and giving you the option of going abroad in a postgraduate where the scholarships also open up. When I was in Stephens, I'd never known that there is a Rhodes scholarship or there's an INLAC scholarship, or these were things which I was not very aware of. But these avenues started opening in your undergraduate level, and then when you go to postgraduate level, the scholarship opportunities open up even further. So if you want to be in India, do well, get enough education here which is grounded, which is affordable, which is also of good quality, and the door of going abroad is not shut if you spend 3 years in India. You can do a master's, MPhil, doctoral studies, postdoc. You can work there. It's still open. You can still go to the US, UK, Singapore, Canada, Australia, you name it, if you spend your 3 years in India. So that's all I'd like to tell the class of 2021. Make very informed choices, make very reasoned choices. It's okay to be confused. If you're confused right now, there's no harm. We all have been very confused about our academic choices at different points of our time. Listen to yourself. Don't listen to anybody else. Make your choice, and I think you'll be fine. Thanks.
Right. Tarun sir, what advice do you give to the class of 2021?
Right. So I'm going to make 3 brief points. The first thing is build your resume now. It's absolutely vital. And if there are any younger DOSCOs, not SE formers on this call, I would advise you it is never too early to start building your resume. You've got to find ways also within your resume to differentiate yourself, okay? Because literally every DOSCO does every activity. You know, you've done an SUPW, you've done an SE. I talked about this earlier. Find something that differentiates you from your nearest and dearest, your closest friends in school, okay? That's vital because that is exactly what will then differentiate you on your written application. And your written application has to be one that is an individual story. It has to be your story at the end of the day. So spend the time. Very honestly speaking, I remember that I applied to 6 colleges and I spent 1 month per college in the applications. God knows how many drafts, redrafts. That hasn't changed. I heard that from Vihan earlier today about how much time he spent writing those essays. You've got to find the best way of presenting yourself, and you only get that one shot. So whether you, that's point 1. The second point is that be creative. You know, show different sides to yourself. Explore that different side to yourself. While you're building your resume, you don't have that much time, frankly speaking, but try and explore some creative aspects, whether it be an EPQ, whether it be picking up something that is of interest. Show that you have that energy, even at this point in time. And in times of COVID, there has been no better time to be able to actually learn something new or do something interesting. Sadly, it will all predominantly be online, but it is available. The sheer variety of things that are at your doorstep today is unmatched. And so, while I empathize with what Yash said earlier, that these are very unfortunate times for you to be applying to college, but you do have a lot more at your doorstep, sitting at home. And frankly speaking, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well, utilizing a computer or a tablet, etc., actually makes you rationalize your time even more. There's less time wasted. You suddenly have more time in the day. Please utilize that time. You don't have, you have a few months before you send off your applications. You have a few more months after that when you have your final exams. If you're going to be studying at home, you actually will have a lot more time in your hands. Do utilize it in building that resume. The last thing I'll say is a negative, actually. You have to recognize that the world is moving towards degrees of nationalism. the global era is really under debate. We see this across the world, and therefore, for those of you that have aspirations that, I want to go and study in X country and then perhaps work there for a few years, do know that it is very tough today in many countries around the world to be able to fulfill that dream. There's nothing wrong with coming back, and you may get opportunities again in your career, and the world will keep changing. You're all very young. In the next decade, you will get multiple opportunities, but do recognize that as because this is a reality. Thank you, Arjun.
Brilliant. Vihan actually had to just hit the road. Like he said, time management is extremely important. We're just few minutes past 8 o'clock. And he said he'll be calling in on the phone. So I'll keep his questions on the standby till then. We got the first question.
I'm still here.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm just calling.
A couple of questions here.
Sure. My advice is all stuff that I've mentioned before. It is work on your communication skills. They're very important. I think there are four main things that you should be concerned about: your communication skills, your analytical skills, your creativity, and your moral fiber. All four things will be tested. My advice, again, with colleges is do your research. My advice, again, is to make a set schedule. Give yourself time to review what you've learned every day or every week. And at least in the United States, professors have something called office hours where you can speak to them directly. Make full use of them. Reach out to your professors for coffee. Build your network, both amongst students and academics. And lastly, always talk to older students. Ask them about favorite classes, favorite experiences, co-curriculars. I didn't do enough of that. I didn't do enough of that in undergrad, but I did it. I'm doing it now in law school, and it makes a world of a difference. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Asking questions is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of engagement. I think in Doon, I never asked questions because I didn't want to seem to be that guy. But trust me, asking questions is so very important. So definitely that's my advice for, preparation, both for school and for life when it comes to getting jobs and internships and pursuing a career that you want to pursue.
Brilliant. So that wraps up.
I'd like to just make one small point. There's something that occurred to me. People that apply to some of the best institutions around the world, one of the main reasons that they do that is for their alumni network. They want to have access to people that have either studied with them or have gone before them, and even the staff, the professors, etc. That is a vital reason sometimes for people to apply to some of the best institutions around the world. The Doon School has that on offer. I say this with humility, but the Doon School has a tremendous network of DOSCOs. It's absolutely incredible. And this is one of the reasons why the DSOBS has really wanted to partner with the school in opening up these avenues, okay? And hopefully through the course of other meetings and seminars such as these, we will be able to actually pursue that in some form or the other. But the office is open to all of you. Do reach out, do ask those questions. We are certainly there to help you on your journey.
Brilliant, absolutely. So we've got a couple of questions. Vihan, if you're still here,
Sure, I'm here. So the first question is,
this project, what's the best platform for him to create a portfolio and promote it? And the second question is, what are your views on the ideal college sizes in US, liberal arts versus larger universities? Since it's important to build relationships with professors, what do you think, in your opinion, would you tell this young boy?
The portfolios question is a great question, and I'm not sure I have an answer right now, but I think it's something that, again, be creative, and people want to see something, they want to see tangible results. So, if you're working on a project or something, or you have an essay, or you're writing a paper of something of interest, always relay that to the school. My thoughts on liberal arts versus larger universities is highly dependent on whether or not the university has what you want it to have. I think both universities are great, and it's kind of finding a fit for yourself. If you feel like you might get lost in a massive university, perhaps consider a liberal arts university. Or if you're unsure and you have multiple different interests, and you feel that that liberal arts college doesn't excel in all the things that you might consider, that's the option for you. Regardless, you can build professors and great relationships with them in any university, whether it be big or small. So it's just kind of finding a fit for where you want to be. You know, where's the university located? You know, what's the weather like? Certain things like that. What's the vibe of the student campus? What's the alumni relations like? I don't think there's too much to worry about as just a simple categorization between liberal arts and larger universities. But there is one caveat, which is that public universities in America, so that's like University of Illinois or UC Berkeley, some of them have limited spots for certain classes. And I think that a lot of the liberal arts universities and some of the better private universities don't have such a demand for classes. So that might be a leg up of private universities or public universities, because you might not be able to take great classes until you're, you know, second, third, or fourth year, just because you're lower on the lottery poll and lower on the totem pole. So that's my advice.
Brilliant. I think the other two questions we had from the speakers, people have already touched upon them. They were about, you know, the importance of transcripts and how to deal with the gap here, especially if you're here in India. So I think that's been touched upon. Thank you so much, all the boys and parents. And before we close this session, we would like our headmaster, Dr. Jagpreet Singh, to address all of us. Over to you, sir.
Oh, well, thank you, Arjun. It's always so difficult to address in the last. And I was noting the number of the participants depleting. We started with 86, are left with 60 plus something. So I thought I really have nothing much to put on the platter because everybody has filled that nicely up, and I don't know what to fit in now. But, you know, even me, when I was taking over as a head of the Doon School, a lot of people told me, you are taking over the school at a challenging time. So I said, what are challenges? First, explain to me. If you consider pandemic as a challenge, I take this as an opportunity. So this is all for you. We are in the testing time, and this whole platform is to show, partnering with our alumni, DSOBS, that we are concerned about you. You are not here with us in the school. That does not mean we are not concerned about you. See the impact of today's evening. We are all so concerned about you. I'm glad when I was thinking, how would I start my evening, came Mr. Rahul Kohli and Tarun Sawhney, holding my hand and said, Headmaster, you don't have to worry. Give this job to us. Let us partner with the school and see what a fine evening you have created. How lucky are these young boys, I honestly say that, who have you shown today the road ahead, college admissions to 2021. But yes, I empathize more with the batch of 2020. They are suddenly in such a difficult situation. Here we are preparing, and now the batch of 21, what they have to do. This disruption which has come due to pandemic, I think has an impact on our career choices now, has impact on our career decisions now. We are rethinking. It's also impact whether we now go to study abroad or we study in India. I think I'm really thankful to Tarun Sawhney, Vihan and Yash Gandhi, who in their own areas have addressed so beautifully. I'm sure there would be many questions, and I'll request Arjun, if these email IDs of all the three gentlemen could be shared with our boys. I'm sure they will have plenty of questions and emails to float around. There would be plenty of doubts. Probably we did not have that opportunity to really ask all those questions. But I'm sure the deliberations have cleared many questions in the heart. It's a lot of takeaway for the young minds. And all I can say is, how fortunate is this school, which has such a strong foundation of DSOBS, who support the very young minds studying in the school, not only support, handhold in them, and take them to their dreams come true. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Tarun, for having me here. This was my first experience on this platform, but you don't know how glad and how elated I'm feeling today to be a part of all this. Thank you very much.
Arjun, can I step in here for a second?
Absolutely, sir.
Arjun, may I step in?
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Headmaster, that was really such a warm welcome to the DSOBS. And I have to tell you on behalf of Tarun, my entire executive committee, the entire old boys fraternity, that you absolutely and completely have the backing and affection and respect of everyone. Your warmth and your welcome is just, it's heartwarming. There is no other word for it.
So much.
And so thank you for your openness and, well, welcome to the DSOBS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Rahul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more thing, and just I'll take one more minute. I'll take, I mean, since to Mr. Our President and Vice President, a lot of these, the younger people may not know, but I think under their leadership, the DSOBS has done some very good community service in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is something which we carry back from the Doon School, which is commitment to society, commitment to service. And it's the President and the Vice President have taken many, many very good initiatives at a scale which Doon School has never earlier seen before. I mean, I can very confidently say that. So that's just one more point for the current DOSCOs for them to know. Thank you.
That's absolutely. And we have also been the beneficiaries of the generosity of the DSOBS and the support, whatever we've needed. I think our wishes, it's the easiest fundraising job which I have in the world. All I have to do is tell DSOBS, we need internships, we need money. And there is a big team which has got 5,000 other people to reach out to. And these voices can make asks all across the world. So it is truly remarkable being a part of this institution. And on that note, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. For those of us who wanted me to share the email address in this public forum, the students, they do know. I think Yash has already typed his in. Otherwise, I would be happy to just mediate and liaise your conversations, club all the questions instead of the speakers getting 100 questions on the same topic. And, we would be able to, I usually do that for you, as you know, when we reach out to the DSOBS. So you all have my email address. You could just reach out to me and I could get you connected with the speakers individually. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a wonderful evening and we look forward to having many more of these. But it has been remarkable. Thank you to the speakers once again. And thank you to the team at school for helping us just get this whole event together.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tarun, Yash. Vihan is gone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rahul.
Come on. And Headmaster, once again, thank you very much. It is such a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Headmaster.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.